Okay, well, and just to be respectful of your time, I'm going to get started, and we'll just welcome everybody in as they get here. Um, I was just telling Shani that, and I think Lauren was on too, that this is my last lesson with you guys for the next 3 lessons. So for the next 3 lessons, Christine Keisinger will be coming in and lecturing on mindfulness of feelings. So today's lesson really wraps up mindfulness of the body. And instead of, I know I told you guys I was going to follow up with some written instruction on what we didn't get to last time. But when I looked over today's lesson, which includes mindfulness of eating, an exercise that we do in mindfulness of eating only really works when we're together, right? So we'll definitely talk about it, but we have enough time to pull in working with discomfort in the body and pain. And so I felt that that was more valuable to do together. So we'll be doing that today. And remember, we're building on each lesson. So just starting out with, learning how to anchor in the breath, which is mindfulness of body. The breath and the body cannot be separated from each other. The body inherently breathes. The breath moves through the body, whether or not we're paying attention, whether or not there's awareness there. And what we quickly learn is how intimately the breath and the body are joined. And so remember, everything that we are faced with in life, all of the stressors, all of the joys, all of the sorrows, all of the sufferings, is absorbed by the body, whether or not we're paying attention. And so really this direct link in to working with the body in a more skillful way, especially when we're dealing with discomfort, especially when we're faced with pain, is very, very important. And it can be mastered eventually, right? We can learn how to communicate with more wisdom and skill so that we're not being yanked around so much, because so often discomfort is misinterpreted. Okay, so that's what we're gonna kind of start with today. But before we jump in, I just wanted to check in and see if you guys had any questions from your practice, wanted to see how the practices are going, see if there's any questions about using the portal, that sort of thing. So I'm just going to open it up for a minute before we go into a practice. All right.
The portal's been great too, Jen. I think, that's been really accessible and
good. Great. So you're able to access all the practices and everybody feels comfortable in there. That's wonderful. Good.
Is everybody able to do that on the team? Can everybody get into the portal?
Yep.
Okay, good. So we'll point out some resources in there at the end of today's lesson, but okay, great. All right. Okay, so we're going to start with a practice and introduce this idea of following sensation or tracking sensation in the body. Okay, first of all, I wanted to start with, does anyone here have an injury they're dealing with right now? An injury in the body of any kind? Okay, great. Okay, so just grounding your feet. And again, you could stand up for this, especially if you're feeling a little sluggish, if your energy is feeling really low. But otherwise, just sit up nice and tall. Ground your feet. Relax your hands down on your legs. And I'm going to ask all of you to mute your microphone. Let's see, just so we don't have too much background noise. And then I'll ask you to turn it back on once the sit is complete. So just setting my timer just to track it, but you won't be able to hear the tones with this. So just relax into your seat. I'd like to invite each of you to close your eyes or take your gaze forward and down, just softening the gaze and dropping inward. Maybe just taking a few deep breaths here, especially if it's the first practice for the day. You could fill the breath up on the inhale and empty the breath out. Notice how the out breath has a downward energy, an earthy, relaxed energy. And see if you could just drop in and down into the body. And just relax any efforting now in the breath. Just coming into a natural expression, a natural rhythm. Feeling into the body just as it is. Noticing your feet against the ground. Noticing how you're sitting, where your hands are. And just acknowledging right now that the body breathes, the body is breathing. Just taking a moment here to establish an anchor in the breath or the body. The touch of the breath, vibrational quality of the hands against the legs. Whatever feels most supportive in this moment, in this practice, just leaning into that. And now opening the field of awareness to include sensation in the body. So you're inviting awareness itself to track any sensation in the body. And that sensation could be very, very subtle or very, very sharp, and anything in between. So just allowing your attention to go into the body with curiosity and interest. And as you find yourself settling in to a space in the body that's calling out for your attention, just land all of your awareness right there. And now invite the breath into that space. So just imagine the breath dropping in to this space in the body, with curiosity and interest. And you might notice that sensation is bringing up a feeling tone. And you might just name that simply as pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. And notice how you can be with this sensation just as it is. And notice also that the sensation will change, dissolve, disappear, move. And as your attention moves with the sensation, allow that to happen. So encourage the awareness to shift as sensation changes. And notice where your attention is in this moment, in the body. Notice also if you've been pulled away from the body, lost in thought, lost in the trance of thinking, planning, remembering. Return. Gently return back, come back into the body. You might just check in with the anchor for a moment and then return to the method. So settling in to where the body is asking for attention in this very moment. Cultivating curiosity, interest, and compassion, self-compassion. Now even describing the space in the body, pleasant, unpleasant, neutral. And then just noticing your capacity to be with this sensation just as it is, without the need to change it or push it away. And now noticing if this space inside is changed, has changed, gone away, dissolved, moved. Now relaxing this method of looking Notice what that feels like to just rest in this field of awareness in the body or the breath. Now you could just open your eyes when you're ready, but take your time. You could turn your microphones back on when you're ready. Okay. How are you guys feeling?
Your backyard is so peaceful.
Oh, thank you. I agree.
I was
My
like
house-
lost. I was gonna say I was like lost in it, and then like right towards the end, my dog came down barking, so it kind of distracted me a little bit.
It
So,
pulled you out. Sure. Yeah, that's life, right? Yeah. How was the practice for all of you? So,
I was super distracted. Like my mind
Yeah.
wandered off so many times.
yeah.
Just like thinking about things that, I still had to do. It was kind of hard to just forget about those things for a bit.
Yeah. So it's not about forgetting, right? It's about noticing. So, wow, mind is really busy today, right? My mind is distracted. And that's
Yeah.
it, right? So it's about, so that critique that, remember I talked to you guys about that little self-critic that lives inside of all of us, right? It's like this little identity, right? So I imagine my inner critic, like she has glasses and she has her hair pulled back really tight and she's like a librarian, and like she's just hitting me with like the little pointer or something. And, I these characters, and you guys will get into some of this work with Christine over the next couple weeks, but these parts of us are real. And sometimes they're just asking to be heard. And so we could just acknowledge, wow, there's the inner critic. She sits on my right hip. She's coming to say hi. And, that's okay. She's there. So just acknowledging that the inner critic is coming up, like, oh, I can't do this today. My mind's too distracted. Instead of, oh, the mind's busy. So we could just be kind to ourselves and notice, okay, the inner landscape today is that I feel really distracted and busy. Right?
Yeah.
And that's a lot kinder, a kinder way to kind of have this inner dialogue. Does that help, Shani?
Yep.
Yeah. All we're trying to do really is be honest with ourselves and mindfulness. Like, oh, this is what's happening right now. Right? Isn't that interesting? Remember those slogans I keep giving you? Write them down, Oh, isn't that interesting? The mind's busy. Because as soon as we acknowledge, like something magical happens there, and it's just acknowledging the mind is busy. Isn't that interesting? Cultivating curiosity, and it settles things down a little bit. It doesn't always work though. And so what's really important when it doesn't work is not to let that inner critic bubble up and say, see, I told you so, right? Like this isn't for you. And so we keep getting those lessons again and again and again. Anybody else? Did anyone notice like a really strong sensation that was surprising? Anything subtle that was
Of just like my mind was definitely very wandering this morning. So I was like kept trying to pull myself back, and then that was like stressing me out a little bit, because it was,
right.
I just, my mind's a little busy. So
right.
I kept trying to just like go back into it, but
right. And so you guys had a team meeting right before our call? Yeah.
Ahmad stressed all of us out, Jen. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
So that could be part of what's happening, right? If you guys are all feeling really busy, like, you know, we just had a big meeting and like planning or whatever the meeting was about, that could still be just in there, right? So perhaps that practice wasn't the most supportive way to get started today. And that's okay, right?
I went right in your
What's,
backyard. That's where I went.
yeah, good. Well, that's good.
It sounded so peaceful.
It was very relaxing.
I was like, boop. I got transported right there, and it was nice. I was just enjoying the birds and every once in a while
Yeah.
the dog.
Yeah.
And so my dog snapped me out of it. So
Yeah. Well, that's good because we're talking about the elements next. So, yeah. If I was inside my house, you'd be like, "Oh, it's crazy in there. let's get out." But it is peaceful out here. So the only other thing I wanted to mention, this practice is really an important practice to come back to, because when there is really strong sensation in the body, it enables us to get curious about it and work with it skillfully. And it's not easy, especially when that sensation is sharp, hot, fiery, electrical, when we're dealing with what we describe that as, not necessarily discomfort, but what? Pain, right? And so we all have moments in our lives where we're dealing with illness or injury, you know, something could be really intense. And sensation in the body, especially discomfort, if we're not practicing working with discomfort in the body, we can very quickly jump into, oh, I'm dealing with pain. When in actuality, we might just be dealing with discomfort. So understanding the difference between discomfort and pain versus just like the sensations of the body, because there's constantly sensations happening in the body, and we often just completely disconnect from sensations in the body. We ignore them. We spend a lot of time up here, right? In the head, in the mind, in the heart, and we ignore the body. And the body's got all the wisdom. The body has this ability to ground us and get and to that space of authenticity, right? Of the ability to be more vulnerable and real and honest. So it's really important to get to know the body. And for many people, this is really, really hard. So if this was difficult today for you, it's not a surprise. I want to bring to your attention two practices that are extremely helpful if you especially had a hard time with today, you know, getting into the body. So the first practice is yin yoga. How many of you have practiced yin yoga?
I have a little bit.
Okay, good. Shani, anybody else? I'll just assume you're a no if I don't hear from you. Okay. So it is a practice that's incredibly helpful. It's very meditative. It is a gateway into the deeper contemplative practices that we're doing now. And it's a wonderful way to get energy moving throughout the entire system. We are energetic beings. Okay, so whether you want to call it prana or chi or life force energy or oxygen, we have chemicals moving through us, or energy, electricity moving through the body, and it comes in through the portal of the breath. And we know from these practices that the breath and the body cannot be separated. They can't be. So if the body's expanding and contracting, the breath is moving through it. If the body's not breathing, we're not alive. Okay? And if the breath is the portal for life force energy or oxygen, whatever we want to call it, we have a lot more power over how energy moves than we give ourselves credit for, because we have direct access into the breath. Wherever our attention goes within the body, wherever, and we could do that. We could bring our attention into our feet like we've been practicing. We could bring our attention into our seat. We could bring our attention into our spine, into the shoulders, into the broadness of the chest. When you bring all of your attention into the body, and then you guide your breath there. So I've been leading you gently to these practices. Guide the breath there, open the breath there, and you could imagine that the breath is penetrating down into that space. What we then have to kind of trust is this life force energy, this energetic part, this subtle energy body that we don't know a lot about, that we're kind of taking a chance on, this magical kind of element of the practices that we're working with. But what we know from the practice of acupuncture, acupressure, right? What we know, who's ever done deep work with Dr. Armale? He's really popular around here, right? Chiropractic work, connective tissue, massage therapy. That's all energy work, guys. We're getting the energy to move through the body in a healthier way. And in the practice of Yin Yoga, we could become very skillful at that, because we're essentially placing the body into different shapes. It is a passive practice. So there's an active practice. So yoga asana, running, lifting weights, that's more active for the physical body. Restorative yoga, yin yoga, more passive. So you could imagine, and we'll try this together right now, just cross your right knee over your left knee. Good. And now fold forward in your seat as far as you can. Let your heavy head hang down. Yeah, so don't look at me. Good. Arms heavy by your side. Good. Let your heavy head hang. Notice the shape that you're in. Feel into the compression of the right thigh against your belly. Notice what that's doing to the breath, the shape that you've put your body into. Notice how the body's breathing right now. See if you can just deepen the exhale a little bit more. And notice how the back of the lungs can open and expand, but the front of the lungs, the capacity has changed. Capacity of the breath has changed because of the shape. Now notice any discomfort you're feeling. You might be noticing some sensation bubbling up in the back of the neck, in the low back. See if you can turn towards it with full interest and care. Really invite stillness in, so no fidgeting. Just a few more breaths here. Just really invite your attention to absorb in sensation in the body and notice how it changes. Now, paying close attention, because the transition out of this longer hold in the body is just as important as the hold itself. So bring your hands to the chair, tighten your low belly, and slowly come up to seated. Good pause. No quick movement here. Close your eyes. Uncross your right knee. And notice how that sensation settles or changes. And now open your eyes. Okay, how are you guys feeling? How was that for you?
Super uncomfortable.
Mm.
I felt tense.
Mm-hmm.
And then when we transitioned out of it, I could feel like it going away. It was weird. But I was like you're saying, feel the sensations. I felt like my pain in my leg, felt pain in my back, my neck.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. That's just me though.
No, this yin yoga is not a restorative practice. Yin yoga is this gateway into deeper understanding of self through the body. And a lot of that deeper understanding is informed by sensation with it, which is often really uncomfortable. And there's a difference between discomfort and pain. So we're never meant to sit through pain in these shapes. It's not okay, right?
Mm-hmm.
So as soon as you feel something hot, fiery, or electrical, something that's traveling, we slowly want to come out, because that's like a red flag, right? However, discomfort is different. It's more of like a deep kind of nagging, dull, nummy feeling that changes a lot. So if we would have sat in that shape for 5 to 7 minutes, you would have noticed that discomfort changing or moving quite significantly. And when we come back to these practices again and again and again, we start really trusting our capacity to be with discomfort. And that practice starts as physical discomfort. Okay, I could be with this. And I could trust that discomfort is impermanent. It's constantly changing. Because discomfort in the body is much easier to work with than discomfort in the heart or the mind. But working with discomfort in the body and building that capacity to be with it builds our capacity to deal with discomfort in the heart, deal with discomfort in the mind. When the mind's ruminating, what do? I don't want to be with this. I don't want to feel it, right? Discomfort in the heart, shame, jealousy, anger, grief, all hard things to deal with. So when we could turn towards discomfort in the body with curiosity and insight and start really experiencing how the discomfort changes and that it is impermanent, it kind of gives us some confidence in dealing with the really tough stuff or dealing with pain, right? Because we're going to face pain. We're going to break a leg. We're going to get sick. God forbid, we might be in the hospital, right? What we're dealing with now with COVID, just the fear of getting sick, right? Preparing for what could come up for us or somebody that we love. So it gives us some courage too. Like, oh, I know I could be with this. I could be with this too. Okay. Additionally, the practice of yin yoga, it's a Taoist practice. Are you all familiar with the Tao? Lao Tzu. It's a Chinese philosophy, Taoism, and it connects us. It's a very earthy, elemental philosophy, really a philosophy Some folks can claim it as their religion in China, but it is just a philosophy, really. And Lao Tzu, who wrote the Tao, he brings our attention into the elements as a modality of healing. And so acupuncture, Chinese medicine, acupressure, there's a lot of Taoist philosophies in those healing modalities. Yin yoga is a Taoist practice, and it uses a lot of the modalities from Chinese medicine. And so it's a very healing practice. The forward fold that you were just in, with your knee crossed, stimulating the ascending colon, was good for your large intestine and your lungs. So it stimulates the large intestine. It stimulates moving energy or prana or chi through the lungs. The lungs in Chinese medicine are connected with the element of metal and are associated with loss or grief. And I don't know about you, but I'm really grappling with a lot of the loss that I've been experiencing because of some of the significant changes we've all had been forced to make in our lives. So it's a good practice right now. In Chinese medicine, all of the emotions, all of the human emotions are just a part of being human. They're all invited in. They're all allowed here. They only become problematic when they get sticky or stuck. Loss or grief is one of those emotions that are particularly, commonly, not particularly, commonly get stuck because we turn away from them. Oh, I don't want to face this. I want to ignore it, right? But really the healthiest thing to do is just look right at it, absorb right into it, give it attention, and invite it to move. And that could bring up, emotions we're not comfortable with. But turning towards the body in a skillful way could build our capacity to be with that too. So I could be with this too is another slogan that I'd like you to write down. I could be with this right now. I could be with this too because I know I've been with hard stuff before and I got to the other side of it. It changed, it moved. I had that experience and it made me confident. And it gave me a sense of courage. And I trust that this too is impermanent. And we start with the body, working with the body. Any forward fold, and yin yoga is essentially a practice that's done low to the ground. And it's a series of forward folds, back bends, and twists. So we're moving the spine in all 6 rotations and the hips in all 6 rotations in these practices. Can you guys hear me? Is that okay? My internet came up as unstable, so I'll keep a closer eye on it. Okay. So there is a beginner's yin yoga practice that will be attached to the follow-up work with this from this lesson. And I really want to encourage you, all of you, to try it. It's about 25 minutes, I think. It's with Mariah. She's one of our teachers. She's actually from the Netherlands, so her accent's a little thick, but she's an excellent teacher, okay? And she and I have the same teacher, Sarah Powers, who's the founder of Yin Yoga. So she developed this practice with a teacher named Paul Grilly. And it's extremely, extremely helpful, okay? The other part of the forward fold that we just did, and before we leave for each other today, we'll do the other side with the left leg crossed over the right. But the other part of that forward fold is it gently pulls on the muscles that parallel the back of the spine, right? So it comes into the hamstrings, The meridian line there is the kidney and urinary bladder. So in Chinese medicine, the meridian theory of Chinese medicine, all of the organs are associated with elements and different emotional tones, mental tones, and the physical health of the body as well. So the kidneys and the urinary bladder are associated with fear. Okay, and stress, very affected by stress. The kidneys in particular are the first organs to be depleted by stress. And when we talk about Chinese medicine, I like to relate back to some Western Western theories that we all are more familiar with, just to see how they're linked. So many of you may have grandparents or parents perhaps that have had kidney infections or urinary bladder infections. And what we know is that elderly people are particularly vulnerable with urinary tract infections, and kidney infections could throw them into a state of complete psychosis. And they're often brought on by stress. The kidneys in Chinese medicine are intimately linked with our emotional well-being. Okay? Our essence energy lives in the kidneys according to these practices. Essence energy, what is that? So according to Chinese medicine, we come in as infants with a certain amount of primordial essence energy, or Jing. And then as we go through life, that essence energy is kind of depleted, and eventually we run out of it. So we want to protect it as much as possible. And what are we trying to protect it from? Just to put it in our layman's Western culture terms, stress. We want to protect the kidneys from stress. And so doing practices like this and inviting energy to move through the system in a skillful way balances out the system. So we invite in the breath. The breath is the gateway for prana, for chi. We could direct our attention into parts of ourselves where there could be imbalances happening or disharmonies. These disharmonies can be corrected just by breathing and relaxing the system. Okay, so the practices are very effective, and we could almost think of this as you know, I keep mentioning the inner scientist. You're getting to know yourselves better. You could think of yin yoga as medicine for the system. Medicine for the system. So the kidney practices are very, very, very good, very essential. And we'll give you more short practices. These don't have to be 1.5 hour long practices. They could be a 5-minute practice in one shape, or something like we just did, folding forward in the chair. Okay? So just an introduction. I want to invite you to have a practice, and we'll give you more information so that you could further the practice along. But very good complement to all the work we're doing here with the mind trainings. Now, to piggyback on everything we just talked about, we could pull that into the meditation practices. Remember, the Taoist theories are related to nature. So the kidneys, blue is the color of kidneys, like a bright blue sky. And we can invite that in. Water is the element of the kidneys. Okay? So we're going to do a practice right now, inviting in the elements in a different way and guiding this visualization practice and relating nature, experiences in nature, to experiences that we're having inside the body. Okay? Any questions before we get started, or anything you want more information on? Okay. So I'd like to invite each of you to sit up nice and tall. Good, and just close your eyes or soften your gaze. I'm going to set my timer here. And just settling into the body, just as it is. We're going to just drop in, noticing how the body's sitting, just kind of orienting. So this beginning of the practice is always about orienting to how things are right now. The body is sitting, noticing your feet, noticing your seat, your spine, feeling into your hands. And then just bringing your attention into the breath, noticing the breath. Inviting the next exhale to really draw you in and down. Remember that earthy quality of the exhale dropping you down into the body, right into the yin tissues of the body, your bones, the connective tissues surrounding the bones in the joints, fascia. Just notice the weightedness there in the earthy yin tissues of the body. The earth element living inside of you. Now gently notice the breath. Noticing the air element in the breath, ether, air, breathing, breath, moving. Notice the lightness of the breath against the heaviness of your bones. Earth and air. Now gently bring the attention into your mouth. Notice your tongue against your teeth. Notice the saliva and wetness of the mouth. And swallow down into the belly. Water. The element of water inside of you. The body is made up of 70% water. Water filling us up. Notice what water feels like inside the body. Now gently bring your attention into the heart. The space of the heart. The element of fire here. Notice the heat and passion of the heart. This fiery element that propels us forward in very big ways, bold and courageous. Just feeling into the fire in the heart. Fire, water, air, and earth. Relaxing into the body and breath. Coming back into the space, opening your eyes when you're ready. Okay, how are you guys feeling? How was that practice for you?
That was good.
Good. Did you guys really feel the elements? Yeah. So, getting out in nature is really essential to our systems, but nature is within us too. So when we're feeling really disconnected, we could just pull it in and feel those elements inside, and it really balances us out. But we could also take that outside into like a real experience, a felt experience. So just walking through the woods or sitting at the beach, whether it's the mountains or the beach that you're into, it's essential to our systems. We need it. We really need to be in nature. We've studied. Sorry, somebody's calling me. Oh, I'm sorry, guys. Give me 1 second. Sorry, guys. Working from home. I apologize. But we could drop into our body. So I wanted to see what questions you have on that before we go on.
I really enjoyed it.
Good. Yeah.
It
Simple
was peaceful. And
practice.
I think your backyard again is helping a lot.
Good.
It sounds so peaceful, but
Oh, we'll have to send you a picture or something. Anybody else have any questions on that practice? The yin yoga practice is deeply connected to the elements. So if you enjoyed that, Joe, I think you'll really enjoy the yin practice, right? From a physical perspective, just a physical perspective, when we're doing yin yoga, we're dropping down into the deepest tissues of the body. So the yin tissues, which I mentioned in that meditation, your connective tissue, the fascia, the synovial fluid, and the joints are all stimulated and kind of releasing tension in a really deep way. So we've all experienced like a knot in our shoulders. That's just fascia that's been bound up, right? So when we could get in there with a deeper hold and release it slowly, the system responds to that. The fascial system responds to that. Your bones and your fascia don't respond to active movement, running, lifting weights, that sort of thing. They need a practice that's deep and still in order to release those adhesions essentially in the connective tissue, right? So a lot of injuries, like persistent, consistent, injuries that just seem to keep coming back are sometimes just tied up in the connective tissue, right? So the muscle can be taken care of through active practices. The bones and the connective tissue need to be addressed in a different way. We can't effectively move the teeth, for instance, if we just got a hammer and moved them, right? What would happen to the teeth? They'd pop out. But we can put braces on the teeth and we can move them very, very, very slowly over a long period of time, and the teeth will respond to that. That's a good example of a yin practice. Same thing. That's what we do in yin yoga. All right. So we very, very small, deep movements over a long period of time, dramatic changes. Okay. The last thing I want to cover, and we're bumping up against the hour now, is mindful eating. So one of your practices this week, over the next 2 weeks, I always forget that I have you guys every 2 weeks. Over the next 2 weeks, you could actually get this in maybe 3 or 4 times. So I'd like to invite each of you, especially, you know, and you could include your whole family in this if you have a partner or spouse, or your children if you have them, or even better, doing it on your own. So sit and eat a meal at a table without your computer, no TV, no music, no distractions. Okay, so quiet, silence. And take a few moments to look at your food. Before you eat it, think about how the food got there. So I'd like you to invite vegetables and fruits, fresh food in, right? And really think about the farmers that picked that food and washed the food and packed it up for you, and the drivers that potentially delivered it to the grocery stores, and all the workers that unloaded it and placed it. And just cultivate some gratitude for this collective meal that you're experiencing. And then just look at the textures and colors and notice, you know, name them, all the colors on your plate. And then smell your food, really take it in. So just going through the senses, right? Smell it. And then when you're eating, really taste your food and chew it up. And then swallow it and notice how it feels in your belly. And just go through that whole process really slowly. And notice when you're full, and consciously make a choice to keep eating, especially if it's delicious, or to just stop. And then clean it up, you know, tidy it all up, cleaning up the kitchen, and try to do that whole experience in quiet, in silence. Okay? And perhaps journal about it. But it changes the way I'm guilty of it, guys. Look it. This is where I ate my breakfast, right? In front of my computer this morning. So it becomes a practice because our modern busy lives force us into eating in front of the computer. Okay? Joe, I think you've been having this experience with your coffee in the morning. And it changes things. It's a practice.
Yeah, I enjoy the coffee outside now, and quiet, and it's nice. It's peaceful.
Yeah. Yes, it's a practice. Mindful eating is absolutely 100% a practice. So your practice doesn't always have to look like you sitting in silence in the corner on your cushion, right? Or us all being together. This is a practice that we're having, but it doesn't always have to look like this. It could be walking through nature, noticing water and trees, and the earth and the sky, right? Feeling into that and how the body is just, guys, we're just bones walking around, bones and flesh, right? There's something else that keeps us alive. But when the soul leaves the body returns to the earth, right? So we could return to the earth whenever we need to because we are the earth, right? Do you ever hear that that little saying, you're made up of stardust? You are. The same elements that are in our bodies are all around us. So it's all interconnected. And this interconnectedness helps us to connect to each other. Once we realize, oh, I'm just a bunch of cells, walking around thinking, right? Then we could just connect to each other. Like we're all having these feelings and sensations and thoughts, and we're all grappling with the same stuff. So it's all about connecting at the end of the day. And once we have the inner resources and we're able to work with them and practice with them and relate, we can relate to each other better and kinder with more compassion. But it's an inside job first. So, all right, guys, it's 10:33. So if you need to jump and get to another meeting, you are free to do so. For those of you that do not have to jump, we're going to do a 3-minute yin yoga practice with the left leg crossed over the right. So that's how we'll end our session today. Okay? All right, so sit up tall, crossing the left knee over the right knee. And when you're ready, you could just simply fold forward and down. Let the arms hang heavy. Let the head hang heavy. And just really relax as much as you can into the shape. So if any of the muscles are really holding on, see if you can invite them to soften. These yin yoga shapes are not a practice for striving. You're not trying to get anywhere. It doesn't matter how you look. Yin yoga is a practice of full acceptance and kindness. And as those sensations are bubbling up, and maybe even getting uncomfortable, I'd like you to see if you can turn towards the sensations with full loving awareness. Just bringing all of your attention there. Dropping your breath deep down into the sensation. Noticing how the body is accepting the breath. Notice how the body's breathing. And notice how the sensation is changing. Try to stay soft in the body, soft as possible and as still as possible. And remembering that the transition out of the shape is just as important as the hold. So just grounding your hands on your chair. Very slowly coming up. Very carefully uncrossing the leg. And then opening your eyes when you're ready. Very, very good. So the 3 practices today, we're following sensation in the body, turning towards it. That was a 10-minute practice. It's probably also why it was a little harder for you. The second practice and the third practice, the second and the fourth practice were the yin yoga shapes. So you'll be able to find those in the supportive materials we send out. And the third practice was working with the elements. Okay. So great job today. You should be still meditating every day. You could bump it up to 6 to 8 minutes. Okay. So see how that feels. If it feels like too much, just come back down again. Remember, it's not about how long of time you're sitting and meditating, it's about consistency. And at this point, you should start feeling a little different. You might notice small changes happening in your capacity to respond versus react, right? Just opening up that space between the trigger or overwhelm and the response. That's where the power is. That's where the power is, okay? All right, guys, I'll stay on for just a minute or two longer, a couple minutes, if you have any questions. If not, I will see you in just a couple weeks. I'll probably check in or jump into one of Christine's classes and enjoy mindfulness of feelings.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Jen. Have a
Jen.
good weekend.
Thanks, Jen. Have a
Thank
great
you.
weekend. Have a
Thank
great
you, you
weekend.
too. Have a great weekend. Bye.